Ah, the Middle Ages, a time of knights, castles, and some of the weirdest jobs you could possibly imagine. Sure, we've all heard of blacksmiths, bakers, and farmers, but today, I'm here to take you on a journey through 10 of the most bizarre, head-scratching, and downright strange jobs from medieval times. So, grab a seat, maybe a snack, and let's dive into the weird and wonderful world of medieval employment. First up, we have the Groom of the Stool. Now, this might sound like a fancy title, but let me tell you, it's not exactly glamorous. The Groom of the Stool was the person responsible for assisting the king with, well, his bathroom habits. Yep, you heard that right. The trusted servant will help the king with his daily business, ensuring everything was clean and comfortable. It might sound gross to us, but back then, it was considered a position of great trust and honor. Imagine putting that on your resume. Next, we have the whipping boy. Now, this one's a real head scratcher. In medieval times, it was considered taboo to physically punish a royal child. So, what did they do? They hired a whipping boy, a poor kid who would take the punishment whenever the prince misbehaved. The idea was that the prince would feel so guilty seeing his friend suffer that he'd straighten up. Spoiler alert, it didn't always work. Tough gig, huh? Ever heard of a leech collector? No, it's not someone who gathered annoying people. It's way grosser than that. Leeches were a big deal in medieval medicine, used for bloodletting to cure all sorts of ailments. The leech collector's job was to wade into muddy ponds, let the leeches latch onto their legs, and then collect them for doctors. Not exactly a job for the squeamish, but hey, somebody had to do it. Now, here's a job that might sound fun at first, the ale conner. This person was responsible for testing the quality of ale in taverns. How did they do it? By pouring some ale onto a wooden bench, sitting on it, and waiting. If their leather breeches stuck to the bench, then ale was too sugary, and therefore low quality. If not, it passed the test. Sounds like a dream job until you realize you're spending your days sitting in sticky beer puddles. Cheers? Ever wonder how medieval folks got their clothes so clean and soft? Enter the fuller. This job involved cleaning and thickening woolen cloth by soaking a mixture of water, clay, and, wait for it, urine. Yup, stale urine was a key ingredient in the process. The fuller would stomp on the cloth to work the mixture in, a process called walking the cloth. Not exactly a job you'd brag about at dinner parties. Here's one that's equal parts creepy and fascinating. The Sin Eater. In some medieval communities, when someone died, a Sin Eater would be hired to eat the sins of the deceased. They'd sit by the body, eat a meal, and symbolically take on the dead person's sins so that they can go to heaven. It was a heavy burden to carry, both spiritually and socially, as Sin Eaters were often outcasts. Definitely not a job for the faint of heart. Now, let's talk about the Armoured Squire. This was a person responsible for helping knights suit up for battle. Sounds simple, right? Wrong. A full suit of armor could have dozens of pieces, and armored squires had to know exactly how to strap, buckle, and secure every single one. Plus, they had to do it quickly. Imagine trying to tie a knight's shoelace while he's yelling, "Hurry up! The enemy is coming!" Talk about pressure. Ah, the court jester. Everyone's favorite medieval entertainer. But being a jester wasn't all fun and games. Sure, they told jokes, sang songs, and performed acrobatics. But they also had to walk a fine line. One wrong joke about the king, and it could be off with their head. Plus, they were often the only person in the court who could speak truth to power, using humor to point out the king's flaws. Risky business, but somebody had to keep the royals entertained. Here's one you might have heard of, the Plague Doctor. During the Black Death, these masked figures would roam the streets, treating the sick. But here's the kicker. They had no idea what actually caused the plague. Their treatments included things like bloodletting or rubbing onions on the skin. Oh, and that iconic bird-like mask? It was filled with herbs that ward off bad air. Spoiler, it didn't work. Still, they were brave souls facing an unimaginable crisis. Last but not least, we have the Resurrectionist. No, this isn't someone who brought people back from the dead, though that would be impressive. Resurrectionists were grave robbers who dug up recently buried bodies to sell to medical schools. It was illegal, unethical, and downright creepy, but it also is a lucrative business. Definitely one for the darker side of medieval employment. And there you have it, 10 of the most bizarre jobs from the Middle Ages. From grooms of the stool to resurrectionist. These roles remind us of how strange and fascinating life was back then. So next time you're having a rough day at work, just remember, at least you're not stomping on urine-soaked cloth or eating someone else's sins. Cheers to progress, right? Thanks for joining me on this journey through medieval oddities. Until next time, stay curious.